A treadmill on wheels powered by a horse. But there were several serious contenders. Sans Pareil, a great big boiler on wheels, was built by the locomotive superintendent at the Stockton and Darlington Railway, Timothy Hackworth. The lightweight Novelty, designed for speed, was built by John Braithwaite and John Ericsson, who had been building steam-powered fire engines at their works in London. They were up against a third engine, built in secret at the Stephenson workshop.
George Stephenson was busy engineering the line, so gave his son the task of developing an engine to enter the competition. Robert built a machine specifically designed to win the Rainhill trials. With a radically innovative high-pressure boiler, it was the Rocket.
Possibly the most famous steam loco of them all, and what a beauty. After a year of painstaking engineering work, this replica has just been completed. Yes. And today, for the first time, she's going to be put through her paces.
In October 1829, the Rainhill trials took place on a recently completed 1.5-mile stretch of the Manchester-Liverpool line, and 15,000 people came out to watch.
During the 9 days of the trials, each loco was required to pull loaded wagons equivalent to 3 times its own weight on a series of 20 runs, equivalent to travelling from Liverpool to Manchester and back. The judges would measure average speed and fuel and water consumption. With some great engineering innovations, Stephenson had made sure the Rocket was up to the challenge. A key design feature was a new boiler capable of producing steam pressure at 50 pounds per square inch. Inside the boiler, instead of the normal 1 or 2 large flues, Robert Stephenson had fitted 25 copper tubes, connecting the firebox to the chimney at the front, massively increasing the surface area to heat the water. He also brought the cylinders outside the boiler and set them at an angle, simplifying the connections to the drive wheels and creating a smoother ride. But how would the Rocket do against the surprisingly stiff competition?
Novelty was stunningly quick, hitting 20 miles an hour with ease, and later managing 30 miles an hour with passengers.
She quickly became the crowd's favourite. But soon things started to go wrong.
But having been built in just 7 weeks, she hadn't been thoroughly tested and therefore wasn't race ready.
Early on, the bellows blew. They were repaired, but then on the final day of the trials, the water feed to the boiler burst. So Novelty never completed the 70 miles.
And to make things worse, each time Novelty broke down, Rocket was sent out to entertain the crowds.
Running back and forth along the track, it hauled passengers or loaded wagons with ease. The judges were impressed.
Hackworth's Sans Pareil also had teething troubles. He'd built the loco in his spare time, outsourcing key components, and had finished her just before the trial started without any proper testing. Getting Sans Pareil ready for her first run, Hackworth discovered her boiler was leaking.
That called for serious repairs, but the judges allowed him the time. Again, Rocket was wheeled out to entertain the crowds. Once the leak was fixed, Sans Pareil managed her first official run. Although her fuel consumption was high, she managed to hit 16 miles an hour with a full load.
She was looking good, but then... disaster. She came to a sudden halt in a cloud of steam and smoke. Her feed pump that pumps water into her boiler had packed in, and a fail-safe device had let water into her flue pipes. The damage was devastating. She would take days to repair. Her trial was over.
So far, no loco had proved capable of simulating a complete return run on the new line. On the 4th day of the trials, at her first attempt, Rocket completed the 70 miles pulling a load of 13 tons, 3 times her own weight.
So, as befitting the first intercity express locomotive, we're now going to open her up and see what we can do.
20 miles an hour.
She completed the runs in just over 6 hours. An average of about 12 miles an hour, but recording a top speed of 24. Rocket had done everything asked of her. Just as importantly, the track had survived the ordeal.
Must have been absolutely terrifying to be on an untested, untried experiment, really.
In a final display of showmanship, Stevenson unhitched the wagons and sent Rocket off for a high-speed run and achieved 35 miles an hour. The public and press were ecstatic. For the first time, humans had traveled at a higher sustained speed than was possible on horseback.
The Rocket had won and secured its place in history with a radical new boiler and firebox and improved pistons and connecting rods. This was the start of a new generation of steam locomotives. And riding this wonderful replica today, I can see why this truly great British machine swept aside all the competition. Fabulous.
But there was a tragic twist in the tale. On the 15th of September 1830, Rocket was one of 8 locomotives lined up for the grand opening procession. The route was packed with spectators to see the first trains run from Liverpool to Manchester. The guest of honour was the Duke of Wellington in his own specially constructed luxury carriage. At 10:40, the Duke's train, the Northumbrian, left Liverpool and 17 miles later stopped to take on water.
The passengers got out to stretch their legs, and then there was a cry. Rocket, pulling another train on the second line, was bearing down on them fast. Well, at about 15 miles an hour.
Men scrambled back on board. Then there was a shout.
Huskisson, for God's sake, man, get to your place!
But the Right Honourable Member for Liverpool, William Huskisson, wasn't quick enough. His leg was crushed under the train's wheel.
Huskisson was bundled onto the Northumbrian and rushed to Manchester at speeds of up to 40 miles per hour, but to no avail. He died that night. A sad footnote to the great locomotive that won the Rainhill trials and cemented Stephenson's place in history as the father of the railways.
Rocket was a turning point. Thanks to its winning design, it paved the way for a transport revolution. It was followed by another great piece of British engineering that finally realized the steam locomotive as a fully matured machine.